it's meant to be a satire of global warming, climate change, whatever, and the fact that nobody seems to want to do anything about it. And, everybody in it is incompetent, corrupt, whatever. Media figures are propagandists and sort of sticking their head in the sand, and everybody is eventually at the end of the movie is literally chanting "Don't look up," as if not seeing the fireball in the sky is going to stop it from destroying the planet. Which, this movie couldn't be more on the nose in a lot of ways. Leo is screaming at the camera. Jennifer Lawrence is screaming at the camera, telling us that we're all going to die. It's just, there's a lot of these things. But the plot is pretty straightforward. It's a pair of scientists go and try to warn the world about impending doom, and they get completely ignored by everyone until it's too late. So yeah, Paul, what are your questions and your thoughts about it?
So what I found interesting about this movie is that it did really end up mocking everyone. And it really rings true to me just based on my professional experience. Unfortunately, this is the analogy to climate change seems like a stretch to me, but I don't know if we want to talk about climate change science on this podcast, but this to me is I know Leo thinks that climate change is obvious and all that stuff, but whatever. Anyway.
I don't think we need to talk about climate change science, but I think we could talk about the way that the media and government and celebrities and entertainment and everybody else talks about it.
Right.
Because I think that's the more interesting part of the movie to me, is that it paints this picture that when we talk about climate change, everybody's ignoring it, but that's literally the opposite of reality.
Right.
We talk about it all the time. They have giant international summits about it. Celebrities, Leonardo DiCaprio being a very good example of this, scream about it and warn and talk about it nonstop. Media figures talk about it. Journalists talk about it all the time. Like it's weird because it's exactly the opposite of the world that they're depicting in the movie. Like they're basically trying to say that everybody's just ignoring this threat, this planet killing threat. But everybody talks about climate change nonstop and has since I was a kid. So I don't understand. I don't understand that mentality.
Right, and that's why I'm looking at this less of an analogy to climate change, because I just don't
a bad one.
See it. I guess you could make it, but what I liked about this is that it didn't sugarcoat our government, the government's arms, the media, people that are very online political, all this stuff. I feel like they got pretty accurate. I would not be surprised if two scientists from Michigan State, which, it's just Michigan State. It's not from any of the Ivy Leagues. They have to sit there and wait for the to get into the Oval Office to tell the president that we're all going to die in 6 months. Here's the pictures. Here's the proof. Not conjecture. Not we're going to raise the temperatures by 5 degrees in 100 years. We're going to die in 6 months. And then naturally the president is like, so it's a 75% chance. And just trying to put as much spin on it as possible.
Yeah. And no, that all does ring true. It just doesn't ring true for climate change.
No. And that's why I'm kind of thinking to myself, I kind of divorced myself from that, because going into this, I'm like, it's all climate. And then it's like, this would happen in a earth ending event where a comet was coming. I could see this happening, and this becoming a political thing, because we've seen it time and again. COVID, climate change, all of this stuff that we should have serious discussions about and open debate is just turned into a political football. And I don't think a human ending comet would be any different, unfortunately, which I guess is a pretty bad look on the world. But our systems are, what's the word for it? The institutions are broken, have been subverted, and this to me does not ring that far off from the truth of what would actually happen.
Look, I agree with that, and I think that if you look at all the characters in the film, okay, there are a lot of things that I think the film gets very wrong in the way that these people go about these things. One, nobody is going, in media especially, if you tell everybody they're going to die, there's going to be 9 million stories about it. They are not going to struggle to get on air to go distribute the message that we're world-ending situation.
The messenger, they did portray this pretty well. The messenger of that we're all going to die is very important. And
it is.
You see this with Greta Thunberg, like all this, time after time, on both sides.
Yeah.
It's always the messenger that always becomes bigger than the message.